All right, so we're going to start off talking about measures of center. And it's really nothing new. You've seen this before. It's it's something that you've definitely been working with for a long, long time. Finding averages, average values. That's not anything that's new. All right? Some of the things that we'll learn after this you might not have seen recently, but it still shouldn't be new. It isn't until we get into next week's class that we start talking about things that are like, oh, that's a new one. All right. But this unit is very procedural, which means that we're looking at step by step. All right. So not so much in the conceptualization, but more so in the realm of what do I do to get the answer. All right. So it's a good way to start the course because later on we'll start thinking about why we were doing those things to begin with. All right, but right now we're in the skills territory. All right, so I'm not going to get too crazy in the advanced ways that the calculator computes, at least today, because of the whole first day of class thing. Not everybody has a calculator, so I'm gonna stick with mostly traditional approaches, and then next class in the beginning, I'm going to show you how you could have done all this on the calculator by hitting a few buttons and not really thinking too much. All right. So in the case of the mean, we're talking about the average of all the values in the set. Now, just to note something here, the mean, the notation, we have two possibilities. We have the symbol X with a bar over it, which is actually called X bar. And don't do too much with the creativity here. With a bar over it, yeah. Later on in the unit, we'll talk about a term that has notation, the letter P with a little triangular hat over it. That's called, you guessed it, P hat. All right, so we try to keep things simple here with the notation. All right, this stands for the sample mean. All right, and again, mean and average mean the same thing. So why don't they just call it an average? I have no idea. Honestly, no idea. The best explanation I come up with when dealing with mathematical terms, different terms that mean the same thing, is that math is so universal that people were working with mathematical concepts at different places on the planet at different times, and they just named it different things when they did that. Okay, so that's all I got. Now let's see if it'll avoid picking up my palm. Okay, so far so good. These are supposed to be plus signs. It's not picking up my palm, but there's a solid lag in the writing. All right. So when you're finding the mean of a data set, we're taking each of the values, we're adding them together, and we're dividing by the number of values in the set. In this case, we have 6. All right. So we have 6 values in the data set. We just got to add them up and divide by the total number of values in the set. So let me get my calculator out because just making sure that recording's on. So 15.1 plus 17.5 plus 18.3 plus 14.1 plus 3.2 plus 6. I don't have to write the 0.0. All right, all in one line. Then I'm going to hit enter. And I'm actually going to write that sum 74.2. Oh, I got to turn my pen back on. And I'm going to divide that by 6. All right, so divide by 6. And so we get this lovely looking decimal. So for now, I can just write it as 12.36 repeated. Right? Because the way this calculator operates is it doesn't use symbolic notation. What it's doing is it's looking at that 7. And actually, let me just do this real quick. I'll paste that number in there. Huge. No. All right, so that's the actual decimal. Yeah, the calculator, it doesn't think the way we do symbolically. It just rounds the last value. It only goes out a certain number of digits and rounds. So we're just kind of stuck with the way it represents it, but it's still better than nothing. Stray marks, sorry.
So if you said 12.37 here,
That would be fine for now because I haven't talked about what the rounding strategies are going to be. But once I do, you'll see what the proper way to go is.
line above 6.
Oh, that the line above the 6 just means that the number is being repeated.
Oh, so you want us to have the line number, right?
For more accuracy, it's better off that way. Right? But if you round it, that's fine too, at least for now.
It would be 12.40, right?
If you were to round to the nearest tenth, yeah. All right, so that's the mean. The median is the middle number in the data set. Now, there could be more than one middle number. If that's the case, you have to do a two-step process. You'd have to find the average of those two middle numbers. Now, the first step in the process would be to take the data and put them in increasing order. All right, and then go from there. Count the middle value. So I'll do that for the first one, and then after that, I'll show you a little nifty shortcut. But remember, none of the algebraic shortcuts I show you are going to be as nifty as the calculator techniques that I'm going to show you next class. That would even, it would tell you immediately what the median is, all right, without doing any of this work, all right? But again, worth our time to get a sense of what the underlying structure is before we start diving into shortcuts. All right, so smallest number looks like 1. Oh, I see what happens here. If I put my palm down first, then it screws up the pen. But let me see, if I put the pen down and then the palm. Yeah. So if it knows that okay, this is great. The lag is because there's a battle. The touch screen is having a battle in its mind of what's the pen? This little part of my pinky or this? And so that's what's going on there. So 6, 8. Oh, there's a 5? Oh, no, that's the next one. And then 9, 14, 24. I gotta find a less squeaky stool here. All right, so I can't demonstrate over there, so I'll demonstrate over here. Because using these two babies, I'm just counting inward, so you find the middle value.
How did you know those are the numbers that
How do I know? Say it again.
The 1, 2, 3, then you skip 4, then you skip 5. And you just
I just took all of these numbers and put them in smallest to largest. And there is a calculator technique that'll put numbers in increasing order for you also. All right, so it really will, starting next class, get to a point where all you have to do is type the data in and know where to look in the calculator. All right, so it'll save us from having to do a lot of this stuff. Let me just get rid of that little funky tail on the 1. All right, now for those that are maybe viewing this video, they can't see me pointing at stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cross off those smallest and largest values consistently until I'm left with only 1 or 2. All right, so here's my smallest, here's my largest. That's like me pointing at the 1 and the 24. All right, now I'm going to cross off the 2 and the 14. That's like me working my way in, and now I have my fingers on the 2 and 14. Then the 3 and the 9, the 4 and the 8, and all I'll be left over with in the middle is the 6. Now you can see just by counting that there are 4 values that are less than the 6, and there are 4 values that are more than the 6, which makes the 6 the middle number. All right, so my median is 6. All right. So that's
question.
sure.
What if it's odd? Because right now it's even. So let's say that it's a different number, like 7 would be 6 and 7.
Then you would average them together.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So now we're 2 measures of center in, right? The mean and the median. So 2 different types of measures of central tendency. One of the questions that we're going to be thinking about as we move forward is, when is it okay to use the mean and when is it okay to use the median? Because when they're talking about things like salaries, they do this for high school teachers all the time. They talk about the salaries of teachers in comparable school districts. Because like when we're negotiating a contract, we want to make sure our contract is fair and consistent with everybody else's. So what they'll do is they'll compare the median salary of the individuals in our district to the median salary of somebody in another district. And a question that a person might have on their mind is, why would you go with the median? Why wouldn't you choose the mean? Why wouldn't you just average them all up and go from there? All right? And the answer to that has to do with the types of numbers that make up a data set. All right? The middle number is the middle number regardless of how extreme the values are. All right? So that 24 on the high side, that could have been 2,400. And that median is still 6. All right? Now this data set would have a mean. Well, let's say that mean is somewhere in the 10 range. If that 24 turned to 2,400, that mean just went through the roof. All right? So they compare, when you're comparing salaries, you compare the median value because of outliers. You compare it because of that one person who's making way more than everybody else or way less than everybody else. All right? So imagine you have a school district where just about everybody that's working there is a new teacher, so only working less than 5 years. All right? So their median salary is going to be on the low end. Then you have another school district where the salaries are all over the place because you have some new teachers and then you have somebody that's close to retirement. They're at the top of the pay scale. If you compare medians, you're going to get a better sense of the relationship between the 2 data sets than if you were to compare averages, because those high-paid teachers in that other school district are going to pull the average up towards them, whereas the school district with the students who are all making, the teachers all making around the same amount of money, they're going to have a more tightly grouped data set. All right. So that's a justification for the median being a more appropriate measure of center. It's just tricky because sometimes you get to that gray area where you're looking at a data set and you're like, I can go either way with this. And so my answer to that is, okay, then go both ways with it. All right, find the mean and the median. The reality is, when I show you on the calculator, it's going to give you the mean and the median at the same time, so you'll have access to both pieces of information. Okay, so the next example, do I want to put all the data in order just like I did for the last one? Yeah. So it looks like it'll be a little bit easier too. Consistency in the approach. We got a process, we'll use it.
And when you have a number that repeats, you still write it down or you just use one?
You write it down. So 0 is the lowest. Then 1, 2, 3,
Two.
2. Yeah. The whole repeating thing, as you said, yeah. 0, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I'm lost.
All we're doing is taking the data values that were given to us and rewriting them from the smallest one to the biggest one. All right, so we're going through this data set that's given here, this printed data set, and saying, okay, what's the smallest number?
Why are you starting with 0, number 5? When you have number 5 below, you have 0.
Step 1, put data in increasing order.
He's doing exactly what he did in the one before. Just the number starting to I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, just starting at 0, because in this case, 0 is the smallest number.
That's something.
My question is, why don't you, in the beginning, put those in order before you went ahead and,
Because I wanted to teach you how to put it in order.
But you can put them in order if you wanted to, right?
Oh, I could do it with that.
No, I mean that the
I'm
mean.
so good
the
at it.
mean, the mean.
Oh, the mean?
Not,
Yeah.
The mean part of it.
Yeah, the mean, you could do that. Yeah, you could put it in order, but it wouldn't make a difference. Right. So, same idea for this one. We're counting inward. So, I'm going to cancel, just like I did with the last one, I'll cancel the smallest number with the highest. 0 and 6. Okay, just like I said, it's the same idea as just going over here and saying, all right, I'm working my way to the middle. So I'm starting on the outside, working my way in. So that's what I'm doing. So 1 with 5, 2 with 4. Now, if I cancel 2 with 3, I have nothing left, so that's no help. What I'm going to do, if I have 2 values that remain, is I'm going to find the average of those. So I need to find the average of 2 and 3. All right. So average or mean. I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did up here, but just with those two numbers. All right. So 2 plus 3 divided by 2. 2.5. So that's my median. All right, so what it's telling me is that the median is right smack dab in the middle here. That's where the median is. Okay, or at least that's the best I can draw it. The median will always have an equal number of values below it as it does above it. So this line here, which is my way of representing 2.5, oh, it's off the grid, I'll fix that in a second. This represents 2.5. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 values less than 2.5. 1, 2, 3, 4 values more than 2.5. So we're in good shape there. Now let me see if I get that 2.5 on the screen. Okay. So mean means average, median means middle number. The mode is the most common value. The number or numbers that occur more than any other numbers. So in the first data set, what do you notice? 7, yeah. So the mode is 7. All right, so the number or numbers that occur more than any other number. So 7 happens twice. Every other number happens once. This is the most frequent value, so therefore that's the mode. All right. In B, is there a number that occurs more than any other number? No. So we're going to say that there's no mode. It's possible that there could be no mode. All right. You wouldn't want to say 0. All right, because sometimes we think 0 and no or none mean the same thing. But 0 would be telling me that there is a most common number, and that number is 0. All right, so we don't want to do that. All right, we can have more than one mode, though. Like in C, what would my mode values be? 1 and 3. All right, 1 and 3 occur equally as many times as each other, but more than everything else. All right, so there's 2 1s, 2 3s, everything else only occurs. Yeah. And what about D? 3 is the mode. Very good. All right, so we don't want to fall into the trap of thinking that just because a number is repeating, it's the mode. It has to be the most frequent value. It's got to be the one that occurs the most. All right, 3 occurs more than any other number. Yeah, 2s and 1s, they repeat, that's fine, but they don't repeat as many times as the 3s do. All right. So the mode's pretty easy to pick out of a data set. It actually happens to be the one thing that the calculator won't easily do for you. You're like, dang it, the calculator's not going to do the mode for me. Oh, wait a minute. I just got to look at it. And that's what you got to train. The most challenging part of being able to figure out mean, median, and mode is remembering what's what. What are you looking for when you look for the mode? Because honestly, the term mode doesn't tell you anything about what its definition is. Same thing with mean. I like the words that kind of define themselves. The ones where, like, just by hearing the word, you kind of know what it means. Median, that feels right. Median, medium, middle of the road. Kind of, yeah, I'm good with that one. Mean, mode. No, you got to study. You got to remember. But fortunately, it's easy studying. It's not the crazy like bio class studying. I remember college. They were like, "So do you like to study?" I was like, "No." And they were like, "So don't take bio." I was like, "Okay, what should I take?" Physics. And I took physics. There was studying in that too.
Studying and
There is. What happened was they were using the word studying, but what they meant to say was memorization. And it's like, use the right word for crying out loud. Yeah. I didn't have to memorize anything in physics. They gave us all the formulas. But that's where the problems began. Because it's like now you got to know how to use them. It's like, maybe I should have memorized them.
mode actually they had to do with a corporation like by percentage or something you use the mode for in or
Yeah, when you deal with counts, yeah. Yeah, and categorical data, definitely. So anytime you're just looking to group individuals into separate categories, that's when the mode would be the most appropriate. Right? It's kind of like the idea of like, if you were using numbers as labels, then it wouldn't make sense to find an average of those numbers. Like, for example, if I were gonna identify in a spreadsheet all the males as the number 0 and all the females as the number 1, what would be the benefit of averaging that together? Nothing. Like, but if I find the mode, I can at least determine whether I have more males or females based on the number that occurs more frequently. Right.
Professor, but like if you look at the concept of it, like let's say I am launching a new product, right? And I'm taking, like WCC as my launching market. You have to look at, like the node, meaning, if you look at the demographics, how many people, certain ethnical groups you have, certain age groups, and that gives you more information so you can target those, like those.
Exactly. Perfect application. Yeah, all the logistical stuff. Anything that you might find as a result from conducting a survey. Like if you were participating in any kind of survey, really, it's usually like which one of these boxes apply to you. Check one. You're participating in a study, but the information that they're going to be collecting is most likely related to the mode. Those are really good examples. The range is the difference between the highest and lowest values. That's nice. Range. I mean, you got to take the wins when you can get them. Difference between the highest and lowest value. Here's my highest. Here's my lowest. Difference means subtraction. Mid-range is a different story. But range, I think maybe now, maybe it didn't used to be, but now I think it is. It's a term that kind of defines itself. Because every time I get in my car, I look at that little range number. It tells me how many more miles I can go before I don't go anymore. Right? That's the distance from beginning to end, right? Like I can go 327 miles on my tank. After that, I'm going to need to do something about it, otherwise I'm stranded. I only ran out of gas once in my life. I got a new car, and I was like, let's see how far we could go. I went for it. I ran out of gas on the Garden State Parkway, a half a mile from the rest stop, the northernmost rest stop. I think it's the Montvale rest stop. And I'm on the side of the road. I'm like, here I am. Half a mile. I almost made it. Well, AAA came and with their little tiny little gas tank, the cute little one, and then they gave me enough to get me going, and that got me to the gas station. 45 minutes I didn't really have to spare, but it was an experience. Now the mid-range is the average of the lowest and highest values. All right, so average of 17 and 1. Yeah, mid-range is a dangerous term because it seems like one of those words that defines itself. It's yeah, because I mean, how many people would think, without seeing the definition, mid-range? Well, the range is 16. The mid-range, well, let's just chop that baby in half and call it a day. Unfortunately, it's the midpoint between the highest and lowest values. So it's the average. So what happens? We talk about it now, maybe a couple more times before the unit test. But then we have that review session, the week before the unit test. And then that week goes by between now and the unit test. Like you'll remember, oh, damn near everything. This is going to go right by the wayside until it's question 3, part E. Something like that. I forget. But until it's on the test, and you're like, he talked about this. He said it was important. There was a trick, a trap. I'm now falling into it. Here we are. Okay. So I guess I'm now going to get this one wrong. I've told people in the past, just find a way. And the best that I could come up with was to go into their phone and on October 5th, on the calendar, on October 5th, create an event. Something like, say, 7:55, maybe even 8 o'clock, because we're not going to start it immediately. I'd say 7, a little bit before 8 o'clock. Review mid-range. Set yourself a reminder. So you get the alert, it pops up. Oh.
Is it always divided by 2?
Always divided by 2.
Always.
Yeah, because
No,
there'll be
never change.
one lowest and one highest. We're only averaging those 2 numbers. Okay.
Tricks, right? I come up with 3 parts.
No, no, I'm not going to sneak in another sideways number in there. It's just no funny business.
And you think of it that there's 2 numbers, so it'll be by 2.
Yeah. So. Yeah, just one. Like if that 17 could be repeated 30 times, it's still just one of those 17 numbers.
So basically on the range you always subtract, right?
On the range, you always subtract.
And mid-range you add and divide by 2.
Okay, so I feel like that's a good place to stop.
Okay.